Good morning. It is wonderful to be together as we celebrate the service of our veterans. Military service has a long history here at Berwick Academy, and we're honored today to be joined by Berwick alumni from the classes of 1953, 1957, 1958, 1965, and 2008. We also have with us veterans who are Berwick parents, former parents, grandparents, former and current faculty and staff, and our distinguished guest this morning. I would ask that those veterans who are able to stand, please do so now so that we may recognize you and your service to our country. Our musical performers today will be the Upper School Chamber Chorus. Due to the pandemic, the Chamber Chorus has reinvented itself by applying their skills towards hand chimes. Hand chimes were developed in the 17th century as practice instruments for cathedral bell towers. Choral singing allows for singers to sing the same part independently of other parts. In bell music, however, each player plays a small portion of a single musical line. With only one player on each set of notes, it's almost impossible to rehearse your part alone or with players missing. Today, the Chamber Chorus will be performing Ritmo Festivo, written by Kurt Meyer, and is dedicated to the service and dedication of the veterans across our nation, and focuses on the joyful thanksgiving of our country for our servicemen and women. We celebrate their stories through music and honor their presence here today. The Chamber Chorus is directed by Seth Hurd, who has coached and directed handbell ensembles for the past 30 years and is a member of the American Guild of English Handbell Ringers. Please welcome the Upper School Chamber Ringers under the direction of Reverend Seth Hurd to perform Ritmo Festivo.
Jessica.
Ever since we were 8th grade here at Berwick, some members of the class of 2024 have been engaged with the world of professional journalism centered around war, military service, and veterans. Working directly alongside today's guest speaker, United States Marine Corps veteran Thomas Brennan and his team of Warhorse News, an award-winning nonprofit newsroom exploring war and its impact through personal narratives and groundbreaking stories. This 18-month journey has exposed us to the entirety of journalism and the editing process. Through Thomas's ongoing mentorship and throughout partnership, the 5 of us Berwick students, 10th graders, are now either published or going to be soon published writers. Thomas Brennan fought in the Second Battle of Fallujah in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, as well as deployed to Afghanistan, where he would eventually suffer a traumatic brain injury on a foot patrol in Afghanistan's Helmand province.
Throughout his recovery, Thomas wrote publicly about his mental health and moral injury in a series of award-winning reflections for the New York Times. After being medically retired from the Marines, Thomas turned to writing as a source of inspiration and healing, all of which prompted him to start the Warhorse. Under Thomas's direct leadership, the Warhorse has influenced radical changes to federal policy and law centered around accountability and transparency for abuse and assault in the military, all while opening the doors for other veterans and military families to use writing as a form of reflection, healing, and influence since 2016. Thomas's investigative reporting has earned him and his team both national and regional recognition, which includes the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Journalism Award, 2 Fourth Estate Awards, and most recently, the Edward R. Murrow Award for Investigative Reporting. Please give a warm Berwick Academy welcome to Mr. Thomas Brennan as he sits down with Lindsay, Virginia, and Noah for a live interview.
With us today. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us today. We have some questions. Why did you join the military, or why specifically the Marines?
So the reason I joined the Marine Corps, one, I knew at 17 I wasn't ready for college. Had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. But most importantly, I listened to my grandfather talk all throughout my childhood. And he had served in World War II in the Navy, but the one thing that he always wanted to do was join the Marine Corps. And 3 times leading up to his enlistment, he walked into the recruiting office, and they told him that he was too small, too skinny to carry a machine gun, and that he couldn't do it. So out of spite, he joined the Navy. So that always planted this seed in my head of, could I be a Marine? Did I have what it takes? Could I do it? And then I walked into the recruiting office, and the Marine Corps recruiter told me I wouldn't be able to do it, and I decided to prove him wrong. So it was really my grandfather that inspired me to serve, and also 9/11 had also happened. So that was a big determining factor for me.
Thank you. Having served a combat tour in Afghanistan, how have recent events impacted you, if at all?
It's been really difficult to watch everything happen in Afghanistan. I think the thing that angers me most is that we abandoned our interpreters over there. These are men and women that laid their lives on the line, left everything that they had in their homes and villages to come serve alongside U.S. troops. And I can firmly say that my interpreter saved my life and the lives of my Marines countless times. We owe them help and assistance. So watching them struggle, watching them not be able to get out of the country, and then knowing that the United States denied my interpreter's wife a visa. So he actually gave up his U.S. citizenship to move back to Kabul to protect his wife. Thankfully, he was able to get out with her, but watching that family go through all that turmoil in Afghanistan back in August was really terrible. And I think there's Vietnam vets in the audience right now. I mean, the fall of Saigon is probably the closest equivalent that I can make with it. But it's been tough.
What do you think about friendship and bonds in the military? How did service affect the way you interacted with fellow service members?
I think, what I value most about my time in Afghanistan was the meals that I shared with the Marines that I was deployed with. Every single night, we'd leave our rank on our rack. I was the most senior guy that was there, and I was Tom, and there was Jim, and there was Serge, and we would sit around the fire at night, and we would cook some dinner. We would eat together, we would laugh, we would talk about home. And now that we're back home, my biggest guilt that I brought home from Afghanistan was the fact that I got 3 of my Marines wounded. I was wounded that day too, but to me, that's a side detail. What I took home from that day most was that I got 3 of my guys wounded, and I changed their lives forever. So I think that the friendships that we have now are to cherish what we had while we were deployed, because honestly, we came from all different walks of life. There were people that I never would have ever talked to or met or crossed paths with, and I got along with them, and not only did we get along with them, we found common ground and we thrived as a unit. So we reminisce a lot about that. We talk about the good old days. We're able to joke about the traumatic stuff a little bit more than we used to, but most of all, we talk about the friends that we lost and who aren't here right now. So.
What was it like readjusting to civilian life? What was your homecoming experience after your first deployment?
After my first deployment?
Yes.
So my first deployment was to Fallujah, Iraq, back in 2004. I was my Marine unit at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina was the first East Coast unit to go to combat over in Iraq. So when we came home, we had no mental health, no assistance on the base. They'd allocated everything to the West Coast at that point. So we were really misunderstood by fellow Marines. We were kind of put up on a pedestal because we'd actually gone and done our job where others hadn't at that point, and that made it really tough. It made it really hard to ask for help. You felt like you just had to keep being that warrior, keep pushing, and it ultimately drove me to re-enlist, but it led me to ignore my own mental health and things that had been bothering me from my time abroad. So I really struggled. I made the mistake of, for probably about 2-3 years in my 10-year career, of just really trying to bury it. For y'all are teenagers or about to be teenagers, it's not if you will have a bad day, it's when you will have a bad day, and you need to be able to ask for help. And I buried every emotion and bit of pain that I had until the suicidal tendencies took over, and I did try to kill myself. The journey home for me was really rough. I was abandoned by the Marine Corps, I think, a little bit. They denied me my retirement, even though I was medically retired. It was just really tough. And the biggest takeaway that I got from coming home was ask for help when you need it, because there will come a day when you will need it, and you need to be willing to take that step. Whether you're coming home from war and transitioning from combat, or you're graduating high school and going off to college, it's a massive life change. And those moments of transition in our lives are the moments where we can often be very vulnerable. And I found myself, very vulnerable and at risk during that time. So it was really painful at the time, but it taught me a lot of valuable lessons now, and where I'm more proactive about my own mental health and self-care.
Thank you.
Why do you think only a small percentage of Americans choose military service? How do you wish that civilians would interact with veterans and service members?
We have people here who, were forced to enlist under the draft. As somebody who enlisted under the all-volunteer force, I think I prefer it that way. I think it makes us be more thoughtful. Afghanistan and Iraq are really not emblematic of this, but I think it makes us be a little bit more thoughtful about the wars and the lives that we put at risk. I'm having a TBI moment. Can you remind me of the original question?
Why do you think only a small percentage of Americans choose military service?
Right. So I think that because it has transitioned to an all-volunteer force, I think that the military service is much more misunderstood than it was before. I think, during Vietnam, I think it was something like 35 or 38% of Americans had somebody in their family or cousin, nephew, somebody in their sphere that served. Nowadays, the military service is turning more into a family business where you have, sons and daughters joining the military, after having watched their families kind of, live life in uniform. I think it's really, like, if I'm being honest, the pay is horrible. You're gonna get, like, toxic exposure. I mean, they're still poisoning people like they were in Vietnam in the military. There's a lot of bad things that I think dissuade people from joining, but all of the veterans in the room right now, I think would agree with me in saying that, like, the people that you meet, the leadership skills that you teach, like whether you're an infantryman or if you're, a woman that's flying a helicopter, like, you learn valuable skills that you can bring with you outside of the military that'll benefit the civilians that you served while you were in uniform. Where I think that we need to transition to is not a draft where we're forcing people into the military, but I think we need to have a serious discussion about public service in this country. Like, Teach for America is an option. Report for America is trying to put journalists back in local newsrooms all over the country. You've got the Peace Corps. Public service is what I think is most important as a nation. Did I answer your question at all?
Yeah, no, that was great.
Okay.
What's the purpose of the War Horse? Why did journalism why journalism? What gave you the idea to have others express their service?
So when I published my first story, I'll take you back. So I started writing as therapy. I was lucky to have a journalist embedded with me in my Marines when I was in Afghanistan, and he photographed the day that I was wounded. So when I came home and I couldn't remember a lot of what had happened to me, his photographs were a window into the day that had literally been wiped from my mind when I got blown up. So his pictures really helped me heal, and I wrote a letter in my notebook that was kind of a thank you letter for him taking his photos, what they meant to me, what they meant to my Marines. But I have never been good at commas. I'm not good at grammar. Like, that's why I have an editor and a copy editor now. The only person that I knew in writing at that point was Finbar's editor, who was working at the New York Times. He was working at the New York Times, who ran the photos of the day that I was hurt. So I sent him a random message on Facebook, and I was like, hey, here's this letter that I wrote to Finbar to thank him for his pictures. Will you please put commas in the right place so I don't look like an idiot? And his response back, maybe like 40 minutes later, was, can we please publish this? And so my first debut in journalism was a byline with the New York Times. Seeing my name in print was awesome, but more than that, I had civilians who emailed me. I had veterans from almost every generation email me. I had military spouses reach out to me. I mean, how that one story was able to bridge the military and civilian divide and bring people together for a conversation about the impact of war was just truly transformational for me to see. And it inspired me to keep writing more of my own personal narrative, but over time, I just really wanted to tell the stories of others. So I started reporting. I decided to use my GI Bill to go up to Columbia University to get my master's degree in investigative reporting. If there's any career services people you'll appreciate this. Like, I didn't apply for a single job. I didn't apply for a single fellowship. I didn't apply for a single internship. I knew there was a void in the media industry and that the media was failing veterans and military families across our country. And selfishly, as a magazine reporter and an investigative reporter, there's no jobs in media for people like me that want to cover. So I couldn't see any career trajectory because of how much news has been decimated over the last few years. So I made the decision to launch a Kickstarter campaign shortly after I graduated and raised $50,000 from 550 people around the world. Some of whom I know, the overwhelming majority of whom I didn't. And they all believed in us being an independent, nonprofit newsroom, like really bringing back rigor and fact-checking and focusing on rebuilding trust with people. Because let's be honest, people don't trust the media right now, and we deserve it. But we want to do better. So to answer your question, the reason why I started the Warhorse is because we do a very horrible job of making sure that vets and military families are represented accurately and fairly in the media, and we want to do better. And in doing so, we've published sexual assault survivors, we've published generals, Medal of Honor recipients. I've interviewed some of the most powerful people in the military, so it's turned into a brand that veterans, civilians, and elected officials alike are starting to respect, and it's having an impact. And that helper's high that I get from doing this is kind of why I can't quit, I guess.
Thank you.
So obviously we could talk to you all day, but we do have to wrap it up at some point.
Class is overrated.
Yeah, I know. I've got a history test next period. So, as you mentioned earlier, there is a civilian-military divide that each of us has a duty to break down. Most of us will not serve, so we need to understand as best we can what service is, allowing us to further comprehend members of our community and society. That has started here, but this assembly should only be seen as a start. We learned about your time in the military, but those experiences and takeaways obviously don't represent all of the veterans here, only you. What should members of our borough community do to try and break that divide? Do you have any closing thoughts?
I would challenge every person in the room the next time you meet a veteran and you feel, or a military family member, and you feel compelled to just give the, thank you for your service. Take the extra 30 seconds and ask them what their most cherished memory from their military services. Kind of flip that narrative on its head. And because most people, when they say thank you for your service or tell me about your time in the military, like deep down they kind of want to know if you've shot at people or blown people up or done the real work. But the happy memories, I think, are really what a lot of us cling to the most. Like I mentioned before, like eating dinner with my Marines. That is still my most prized memory from my deployment over there, because it was a closed every single day. It got us away from, things were still exploding in the distance. I could hear, other Marines in the area of operations getting hurt while we were eating. But that was our moment to just be us, for me to be TJ, for, Roche to be Jim, and for, Clarkson to be Sean, and allowed us to kind of take off our armor for a little bit and be us. I would challenge you to ask people to ask about their happy memories. Because let's be honest, nobody likes to talk about their most traumatic moments. We all have them, whether you've survived famine or, domestic abuse. There's all kinds of trauma in the world. People want to talk about happy things. People want to talk about moments that shaped them in a positive way. And people want to move the conversation forward. So I would ask people about their most happy memory when you talk to a veteran. Or a military spouse, because they have happy memories too, and they serve in their own way when they're with, when you're married to the military. So that's kind of my closing thoughts.
Cool, thank you. If anyone else is interested in any of Mr. Brennan's work, visit thewarhorse.org. That's his media company. You'll find everything you want to know there. And to close, we have a thank you gift for all your help with writing and producing these stories. It's been pretty eye-opening, actually, and it's just been great. Great journey.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Jim Hamilton, head of school, and I'd like to offer my own thanks to Thomas for being here today, to sharing with our students leading up to today and sharing with the community today. Thanks to Noah and Virginia and Lindsay, Hannah and Jessica for your work this morning. And thank you to the Chamber Chorus for the music also. To all the veterans in attendance, thank you for your service and for protecting our freedoms. I look forward to connecting with all of you at our reception. And as I release the masses, I would ask you to wait here until the students and faculty and staff are released, and then we will meet in the front for a reception. Students, faculty, and staff, as we leave, we're going to do so through two different channels. So sort of this half of the room, we'd like you to exit out the door closest to the training room and to proceed straight out the door, heading out towards Field 1. And then this half of the room will have you leave out through the doors, through the sort of traditional exit that way. And so with that, students, faculty, and staff, you are dismissed, and veterans, we will see you in the locker room.